Hey guys, this is Srijan Kumar, and today we are going to talk about HTML forms. The form element. The HTML form element defines a form that is used to collect user input. An HTML form contains different types of elements. Uh, like form elements are types of input elements like text fields in which it takes text input, checkboxes, and radio buttons, and submit buttons, and much more. Here is the syntax, basic syntax for the form. Open the form and then form elements like if you want a text field, then take a input as text field and then checkboxes, etc., and then ultimately close the form and then HTML tag. The use of input element. The input element is one of the most important element in the form, in which it takes the input from the user. The input element can be displayed in several ways depending upon the type of attribute. Some of the examples given here. Here, the type is input type is text, in which it takes one or two lines of text depending upon the user requirement. And then here is the input type radio button, in which it takes one of the many choices. You can select one of the many choices. Here is one of the type that is submit, and this is used to submit the whole form. The action attribute. The action attribute defines the action to be performed when the form is submitted. Normally, when the form is submitted, the form data is sent to a web page on the server, and then when the user clicks on the submit button. If the action attribute is omitted, then action is set to be the current page by default. The target attribute. Target attribute specifies if the submitted result will open in a new browser tab or in a current window. The default value is self, in which the form is submitted in the current window. And if you make it blank, it will be submitted in one more tab in the in the same browser. Here is the syntax. Form action equal to action php. Here PHP it is one of the backend program. Here you can use any of the backend program which takes the input from the HTML web page which you create, and then it processes it in a backend and it will store it. And here the target attribute is assigned as blank, in which it will open a new browser tab and then it will submit the form. Method attribute. The method attribute specifies the HTTP method like that is get or post to be used when submitted the form. Like get is used to request data from specified source. Post is used to send data to a server to create or update the resource. Get method. Uh, it gives content of the web address in the form. Form action is equals to here the syntax is action page.php, that is for the backend, and get method is assigned to get. And here is the syntax for the post method. Here nothing to change, just change the method equal to post. The use of get method. The default method when submitting the form data is get. However, when the get is used, the submitted form data will be visible in the web page address field. Here is the example for this. Appends form data into URL in the name or value post. The length of the URL is only limited till 3000 characters, and never use get to send sensitive data. If you have sensitive data to be uploaded in the form, that is, if the user enters some of the sensitive data like it may be ATM card number or it may be his address or something which is very sensitive, that never use the get method because it is not secure and like very stringent in the Google. The use of post method. Always use post method if the data contains some sensitive information or personal information. The post method does not display the submitted form. data is in the page address field. The post has no size limitations and can be used to send data of large amount of data. The name attribute. Each input field must have a name attribute to be submitted. The form which will be created, like each attribute must have a specific name to be submitted. Like if it is a name, then it should be addressed as name. If it is first name, then it should be addressed as first name or last name. If we get if we use get method, then omitted name will not be visible at the web address bar. The syntax for this is input type equal to text, and then text or name will be like let's assign the name as last name and value equal to mouse. Grouping form data. Grouping of the form data. Here generally in order to group certain set of data in the form, field set tag is used. The legend tag, this element defines a caption for the field set element. Syntax. Form action. Here the form action will be specified, and then next will be field set, and then in the legend heading you want to be displayed, and then label. Inside it you will specify the input type whatever you want, and then close the field set. HTML form elements. It is an input element. Select element like select tag element uses a drop down list in which you can select any one of the specified options. The option element defines an option that can be selected. By default, the first item which will be in the drop list will be selected. And to define a pre-selected option, like whichever the option you want it to be by default, add the selected attribute to the option. The syntax for this is option value and then selected, in which you can specify the name of that option and then close the option tab. Here is the example. Select name equal to example ABC, and that you can give the option value as 1, 2, 3, etc. and then close the options. HTML form element. In this second type is select element. Use the size attribute to specify the number of visible values. Select name equal to cars and size equal to 3. Here the name of this select element is cars and then size is 3. Here the 3 values for the car will be visible. It allows the multiple option selection and select name equal to car, and then if you specify the size as 4, use control to select the multiple option at the time. Text area element. The text area element defines a multi-line input query. Example for this is text area name equal to some message, row equal to specify the number of rows and columns, and then write the cat was playing in the garden. This is one of the sentence here, and then close the text area. The row attribute specifies the visible number of lines in a text area. The column attribute specifies the visible width of the text area. And then other element, the next element is button element. Here it defines a clickable button. Syntax for this is button type, give it as button and on click alert. If you want uh, add any function for whenever you click on it, you can add it. Then input type text. In this, the input type is text, defines one line text input field. Here it was text area. It takes the multiple line input, and here it is only text, which takes only one line text input. Here is the syntax for this. Open the form and then give an example. Like if you want to take an input as name of the user, give it as first name. Peer is break, and then give the input type, that is text, and name it as first name, and then uh, last name, and take the input as text again, and then name it as last name, and then close the form. Input type, password. The password is one of the input type that uh, it gives the password in uh, whenever there is a. It is also one of the text area type, but it specifically takes for the password. Syntax for this is input type equal to password and then name. Name it as whatever you want, and input type submit. Submit is defined as a submit button for submitting form data to a form handler. Form handle is typically a server page with a script for the processing input data, that is for backend, and the form handler is specified in the form section attribute. Syntax for this is input type equal to submit and value equal to submit, and then close that element. Input type reset. This is used for it is a reset button that will reset all the values to the default values. You click the reset button, it will change all the selected attributes to the default, whichever the form is having as a default. Input type reset. The syntax for this is input type will be reset and value will be reset. To change the input values and then click the reset button, the form data will be reset to the default values. Another type of input is the radio buttons. Here, uh, input type equal to radio defines a radio button. The radio buttons let the user select one of the limited number of the choices. Example for this is form. In this, take the type as radio and then name it, and give the value as for example in gender, give the value first value as male, and then check M, and then close the tab, and then take another radio button, and which is also named as gender, and the value will be female, and another radio button, it will be the value for this will be like others or whatever you want to name, and then close the form. Input type checkbox. Under input type is checkbox, in which inside it tick mark will be given. Um, the syntax for this is input type equal to checkbox and then name of it and then value for it. It is defined as a checkbox. Checkbox allows us user select zero or more than more options from a limited number of choices. Example for this is open the form and then input type will be checkbox and then name the checkbox whatever you want, and then value will be, let's take the name as vehicle. In this it will be bike. I have a bike, and then here input type, take it as checkbox again and then name it as vehicle 2, the value will be car, and then close the form. Input type, another input type is button. Here uh, the input type equal to button, and then on click you can add any of the function and then give it a value. It is click me. If you add it as click me, there will be a button inside which it will be written as click. Value attributes. And there are many attributes in the input type. In this, one of it is value. The value attribute specifies the initial value for the input field. Next one is randomly. A randomly attribute specifies that the input field is read only and it cannot be changed. Disabled. The disabled attribute specifies that the input field is disabled and the disabled input field is unusable and then unclickable. And its value will not be sent when you are submitting a file form. Size attribute. It specifies the size for the input field. That is in characters. How many characters you want it as size. Example. Now take a form. Use the first name. Take the type as first, and then name it as first name, and then value will be, for example, John. Then it will read only disabled, and then size is specified as 40, and then close the form. Label tag in the form tag. It is considered better to have a label in the form as it makes the browser user friendly. If you click on the label tag, it will focus on the text control to do so. When you need to have for an attribute and a label tag, that must be same as ID attribute of the input tag. Example for this is open a form. Here the label for is first name, and then give it a name as first name, and then close the label. Here you can take the input type is text and name the ID as first name. The label and ID must be same. And then name will be first name and then close the input type. And take another label that will be last name. And then here give the ID also as last name. And then close the input and then close the point. Another input type is color. You can specify the color you want for the input type. Like input type equal to color. It is used for input field that should contain a color. Depending on a browser support, a color picker can show you the input field in that specific color. Input type date. Date is an input type in which you can choose the date. It is, for example, open a form, select your favorite color. Here, input type is mentioned as color and then name equal to favorite color. And here, take another input field that is date and name it as birthday. And then close the form. So another input type is email. Uh, Same, the input type will be specified as email, and it is used for input field that should contain an email address. Depending upon the browser support, the email address can be automatically validated whenever it is submitted. And some smartphones or some browsers can recognize the email type and add it as .com or .in to the keyword to match the input. The another, for example, input type equal to email and name it as email. And another input type is file. And the input type equal to take it as file. In this, you can select a file whenever you want to upload a file. Suppose in an application, the file will be like if you want to upload your file as a resume, there will be a file picker specifically, and then whenever you click it on select a file, it will automatically redirect you to the local file system of your PC, and then you can browse through it and then select one, and then it can be uploaded. Then the input type is number. Here it specifically takes a numeric number. You can also set your restriction on what numbers are accepted. For example, if you want to take the value only from 1 to 5, take the input type as number and name it as quantity, suppose. The minimum value will be 1 and the maximum value will be specified as 5. Range is another type of input in which it controls uh, for entering a number whose exact value is not important, like slider control. Default range will be 0 to 100. You can specify a range of. However, you can set any restrictions on what number are accepted within with minimum and maximum attributes and step attributes. Example, input type will be taken as range and name it as suppose points, and minimum will be 0 and max will be 10. Input type search. It is used to search, it is used as specifically search fields, and the search fields behaves like a regular text field. Suppose if you want to create a Google text field, then give an heading Google and take an input type as search and name it as Google search. Another input type is URL. It takes specifically URL addresses. Depending upon the browser, like it can add a URL field can be automatically validated whenever it is submitted. Some smartphones or PCs can recognize the URL type and it can automatically add like .com or .in to the name whatever you have given in the URL. Add your home page, suppose. Input type will be taken as URL and the name will be home page. Keyboard to match the URL. The another attributes like HTML5 will be providing you with some of the more attributes in the input form, like height and width attributes, and you can specify the size of the images in a browser if you want, and then the list attribute. The list attribute refers to data list element in which you can use it as a drop-down list. Like input list equal to browsers, in that you can do ID equal to browsers and then add the option values. For example, Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer, etc. Minimum and maximum attributes. Um, the minimum and maximum attributes specify the minimum and maximum values for an input element. Here it can be taken as for example, you are taking the date at date and then take the input type as date, name equal to suppose it is a birthday, and then you want to add a limit for it. Then set max equal to whatever date you want to put in. It may be 2003, 3, 1. The multiple attribute. The multiple attribute specifies that the number like it can allow to enter more than one value in the input element. Suppose you take a input element as image, and then here is an example. Like, select all the images with traffic lights. Here, multiple images are given, and it can take multiple inputs. Multiple attribute works with the following input types: email and file. Select files. Suppose you want to add multiple files, then multiple files can be selected and then uploaded. The placeholder attribute. Placeholder attribute specifies a hint that describes the expected value for an input field. Suppose there is an attribute, there is an input text that is first name or address, suppose, or below that there will be written example for an address, how it must look like. That is hint, and it is displayed in the input field before the user enters a value. The placeholder attribute works with the following input types that are text, search fields, or URL, or email, or password. The required attribute. Uh, there will be a star mark uh, after a text field or an email or password. It specifies that the attribute is required. That must that you must fill it before submitting the form, or else the file form won't take the input. Thank you for watching, guys. Now I will show you code, and here is one of the example. Here, open an HTML tag and then give the title, and then in the body, you will select the form, and then method will be post. And here I have used the field set, and then legend. It will give a boundary line with the heading on it. Like I have chosen a font color equal to red, and face equal to some face whatever you like, and then I have specified bold. In the bold letters, it will say personal details, and then close the font, and then close the legend. And here I have used table, and in the table rows, I have given name, and then taken input type as text, and I given the size as 20, and close the table row. And in another table, let's suppose it is password, and then it will take up input type as password, and size will be maximum 20. And in another row, suppose it is email, and then it will take the input type as email, and size will be 20. And here, suppose you want to take, let's take it as gender, and we'll add some radio buttons. The input type will be taken as a radio, and then name it as gender or gen, whatever you like it. And then in the value, you will give it as male, and label it as male. And then in the next radio button, name it as female, give the value as female, and then in the label it as female. And then another row, let's suppose we can take date of birth. In this, the input type will be text, and placeholder is first it will be month, and then day, and then year, and then close the input. And in another row, we'll take it as number. Like take the input type as number, and then close the input. Uh, Here we'll close the field set, and we'll take another field set. From that, the legend, you can give the heading as educational qualifications. In this, open a table, and then uh, give the first row as degree, and then in the degree we can use a drop down list, and then give the value of option values, like it is PG or UG. And then you can give the heading as select group. And then if opt group, if it is opted as UG, then in this you can give the option values are B, B type, BSc, BA, and then close the opt group. If another opt group, suppose it is PG, then give the options as MTech, MSc, MA, MCA, MBA, and then close the opt group. In another opt group, let's suppose it is PhD, give the option values as engineering in PhD, and science, or it is management, or any other. And then another row will create as text for, it will be suppose it is engineers, and then take select it as select name will be given as degree, and then ID is degree, and add the option values followed, uh, is CSE or PG, PhD, and then close the field set here, and we'll open another label that is hobbies. Here you'll take the input type as checkboxes, and then add the value as bulk, and label for equal to choice one, playing chess, and then take another checkbox, and then label it as reading books. And let's take another label that is your favorite colors, and take the color type input type as color, and then close the input. And then we can take another label, let's suppose address. Here you can do the text area row as 4 and column as 50, and then close the text area. And let's suppose you can create a file attribute that will give input type as file, and then at last we'll create a submit button. And now let's run the code. This is how the code looks like. This is a legend, and it will create a boundary line, and then it will label it as we have labeled it as personal details. And then another it was educational qualifications, and then another one was address. Your name all capitals. Sujam Kumar, and the password it will take as then we'll give a email address, and then you can select the gender here, and then you can give date of birth. And here you can give mobile number, and then in educational qualification you can select one of the degree. Under UG you'll see these options, under PG you can see these options, and then PSP you can see these options. Select it as view type, and then it will automatically assign it as CSC by default. You can choose any other EC or civil or mechanical. And in hobbies you can check the checkbox of reading books or playing chess. In your favorite color, here you can choose any of the color. In the address bar, let's suppose you can give an address of X website. And here, if you want, you can choose a file. and then you can click on submit. Here there is no backend, so this gives out as invalid. So thank you guys. This is all. Please do like, share, and subscribe.